Welcome back to Reaper Minis TV, everyone. We're going to start off this episode with a whole slew of Chronoscope reviews. Here we have two government agents, Agents Smith and Agent Jones, and they bear at least a passing resemblance to the MIB's Agent Z and J, I think it was, in Men in Black, Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. Well, anyway, Agent Jones is the guy who's carrying what looks like the neuralizer in his right hand, the flashy thingy, and he's got some kind of alien tech pistol in his left hand. He's wearing the suit and government-issue sunglasses like you might expect. There were a few mold lines that were visible, but taken care of pretty easily. None of them were too thick or anything like that. There was a little bit of flash that needed to be cleaned, but nothing too extensive. For Agent Smith, we've got him with a larger pistol in his left hand, and he's using his right hand to activate some kind of communication device, probably, that's up in his right ear. You have the same suit and sunglasses that the previous agent, Agent Jones, is wearing, and the pair of these I think would go well together in just about any kind of modern game. You could drop them into a D20 modern, D20 future game maybe, even if you wanted to. In a superhero game, you could definitely use them as agents or NPCs to interact with the heroes that you're running. You could run them in a modern game that has a sci-fi element to it, just like Men in Black, but I think you could have some pretty decent uses for them in a couple of different settings. These next two guys I think go well together also. We have Frank Buck, an adventurer, and a Thugee Cultist. I definitely get an Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom feeling when looking at both of these, but Frank Buck on his own could definitely work as an Indiana Jones stand-in. You've got the pistol in his left hand and the machete in his right hand. He's got a shotgun on his back, and you've got the whip that's coiled and hanging off of his belt. It's a good one-piece miniature. There was some cleaning that was necessary. There are some visible mold lines, most prominent on the blade of the machete, and then on the inner fold of his left arm there's a mold line. There's also one that's going across the top of his fedora, so just carefully where the indentation is, just be careful when you're scraping that away to not mar it or damage the figure in any way. But it's a good figure. I like the pose. It has uses in any kind of pulp game. I think in a World War II or Weird War II game, you could use him as a hero type on the Allies force, so good all-around figure here. With the Thugee Cultist, you get a choice between a club and a sword that you'll put in his left hand. His right hand is balled up in a fist, and he's in an aggressive pose where he's about to get into a fight or have a combat with somebody. This miniature did need a bit more cleaning than Frank Buck, our adventurer. There were mold lines and flash under both arms that needed to be cleaned. On the inside of his legs there were some mold lines, and even on the outside also. So he took a little longer to clean up, and nice variety of weapons you get to choose from here to arm him with. I'd like to see a couple of more. I don't think you need a huge extensive line of Thugee Cultists, but if you had one or two more that you could use to flesh out a group of these guys in different poses, I think that would be pretty good. Next up we have Krampus. This is a single-piece miniature of a demonic kind of guy, and I didn't actually know who Krampus was until I did a little bit of Google foo, but I found out that he is a Christmas time kind of imp or demon that accompanies St. Nicholas, and Krampus deals with the bad kids, while St. Nicholas deals and gives gifts to the good kids. Krampus has a large club in his right hand, and on his back he's got strapped a large barrel, and I would expect if you're really bad you get the club, and if you're only sort of bad you probably get a piece of coal or something that's going to be in the barrel that he's carrying. So a miniature of fairly limited use here, unless you're making a Christmas diorama where maybe you have Krampus and Santa Claus in the same scene. I don't know if I would have another use. Maybe if you had a Call of Cthulhu game that was Christmas themed, I think you could pretty easily drop him into something like that. Here we have Twister, a female superhero. It's a single-piece miniature of what I would expect to be a wind-based or weather-based superheroine. And one thing that immediately stood out to me that I liked a lot was on her full bodysuit that she's wearing, there are lines that are part of the sculpting to differentiate sort of like the parts of her bodysuit where the legs are and the top and the bottom half are separated, and this would really help in painting and separating those areas to have clean lines. And if you have a good steady freehand, that's good. Maybe you don't need something like that. For me, this would be an excellent guide to make sure that all of the lines are crisp and clean if you wanted to do separate or distinctly different contrasting colors on maybe the top half and bottom half or right side and left side. To me, this is an excellent addition to the miniature and helps the painter. At least it would help somebody like me. Now on the downside, and this may just be limited to my figure, you might have a cleaner one, the mold line ran down, like if you took and bisected the model from head to toe, that's where the mold line runs. And it just goes from the top of her hair all the way down to the front of her right thigh, and then on the back side does pretty much the same thing. Now the problem is that some of these areas have corners and folds in them, so it's going to be kind of difficult to get a very clean removal of this mold line. It can be done, it just takes a steady hand and a little bit of time. So other than the mold line, I really like this model. I really like that the costume has the separation in it. That'll help with painting it. Okay, on to two new miniatures for the Koborolas faction for Warlord, and these are the giant wolf-like creatures that you can find in the Savage North rulebook. First up we have Luta. She's a Rageclaw Shaman, and we also have a Shadow Tracker. Both of these figures come with 40mm square bases. Luta is a single-piece miniature that's carrying a staff in her right hand and a knife or dagger in her left hand. Now, the way that the miniature is posed, it almost looks like she's carrying a pistol in her left hand, but it is a dagger, and she's more carrying it, pointing it at somebody like they're about to be on the receiving end of whatever spell she's about to cast. She's dressed in a little bit of tattered clothing, but is fully covered in fur. She has a couple of belts on with some scrolls and pouches, and a very snarling kind of look on her face. So a very aggressive looking miniature here. The Shadow Tracker is a two-piece miniature where you've got her left arm and sword as a separate piece that'll glue on up right about the shoulder, and then the rest of the figure you've got another sword in her right hand. She's also wearing a belt with a little bit of gear on it, and then she's got a brassiere on and some shoulder plates. She is a little more slender than Luta, a little thinner build, so filling more of a scout or rogue role, I would think. Or at least Shadow Tracker, that name implies that to me anyway. And into the Pathfinder line now, we have a large blister here. This is the Keketar Protean. I think I pronounced that right. It's a large monster that comes with a 40mm base. It comes in three pieces, the main body, and you can see there's a rocky or large crystal kind of outcropping that it sits around at the base. And then you've got the head and a little bit of a dorsal fin kind of structure that come as separate pieces. Now the base miniature itself looks sort of aquatic to me. I'm not a Pathfinder player, so I'm really not sure of the history of the miniature, but it looks sort of aquatic to me, so I think if you painted it up in blues and greens it would look really good, or you could also use it as kind of a salamander, a more fire-based creature. I think either one of those would work perfectly well for this figure. The head goes into place between the shoulders, and the neck and face part, or the jaw part of the head, sticks out a little bit, almost like an eel, and then the little bitty fin part just slides right into place on the back of the miniature. Overall assembly was quick and easy, not really much cleaning necessary, and obviously if you're playing Pathfinder you'd have a use for the figure, but if you're playing D&D and needed a salamander or some similar type of aquatic creature, I think this would be good. And you could also, I think, easily drop this into a horror game, a sci-fi game, almost any kind of game where you need a big serpentine kind of monster creature. I think this would do very well. Thanks to everybody who's watching Reaper Minis TV. I appreciate all the subscribers. I'll see you all next episode.